Pardon My Parsing podcast. My name's Charlie Sauer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kelly Marsh. How are you
doing,
Charlie?
Kelly? I hope everything's going well for you. I hope you've had a great week. I hope you had a chance to knock around those little white golf balls a little bit. And if not, maybe this weekend.
I'm, I love walking on the golf course, but I like it now more because we're through the evil pollen days. So now it's not like I have to pay for it for a couple of days.
Now you're getting into the sunscreen and scorching hot. Oh well, I live in Texas, so it might be different for you, but maybe you got a few more weeks.
Whatever. I'm an official redneck, so anything where the sun is peeking out is scorching hot for me. I can feel my skin boiling underneath the
Be sure
sun,
to wear your sunscreen.
Whatever. At least we're in getting into better weather at some point. So because now it's not even really a good transition, Kelly. I was going to try to say because now it's bad weather. The dark, gloomy clouds of government are hanging over our heads. All right, I like cliches, but maybe that's not the best way to start off something. We're dealing with another speech from one of my favorite politicians. I hope you can hear the snarky on my voice at least a little bit. Lina Khan.
Yay.
Yay. So Lina Khan is the head of the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And for those of you who haven't heard our show before, I will admit the Federal Trade Commission and a speech from the director of the Federal Trade Commission sounds boring. But it's one of the reasons we do this show, because as you get into these speeches, you find out that they aren't boring. We found out looking back through a State of the Union from 1978 that Jimmy Carter was actually maybe to the right of Ronald Reagan. You find out things in these speeches that are interesting, and the last one we did from Lina Khan was great, and so I look forward to doing yet another one, and hopefully still feeling the same way that I do at the end of this, but I've already read the speech. It's a bad speech, I'm going to
I think your point is right. We find little nuggets in here. We find really interesting details. Some fascinating claims often happen. These are things that are worthwhile, and no one else is doing this. So come on, guys. Hit like and subscribe. Come on.
Even before we start, I want to talk about a recent quote from Lina Khan's that I found interesting. Tweet. Did I say quote? A recent tweet from Lina Khan that was interesting, and it said something, and this is kind of about the speech today. It's about data privacy and data. But it said, AI holds a lot of promise for our future, but we need to watch out for what it can do for privacy and human rights and whatever. And I wanted to, I sent back an answer or a response because we were talking about the tweet over an email chain. And it was, the wheel holds a lot of promise for society, but it could increase wealth disparities and other problems in society. It's amazing to me. It's kind of worse than a glass is half full or half empty type thing. It's kind of like, I don't care how full the glass is, it poses a risk to my ideals.
Yeah, also John Connor poses a risk apparently too after Skynet becomes sentient. And is that not what you were talking about? Did I miss the point of AI? I may have been off in a different...
Well, no, that's where AI's going. Maybe that's what she's talking about. Maybe she's a Terminator fan, and this is just her long-term con. Where when he finally comes back, when it's the T-2000 that's like liquid metal and actually scary, maybe she's going to be like, "See, I told you."
Is that her nickname, long-term con?
That's awesome.
You need to trademark that one.
All right. So here we go. It's a striking moment to be discussing the state of data privacy and security today. The pandemic hastened the digitization of our economy and society, further embedding switching over to virtual formats effectively overnight. She's just starting off. I think she's directly correct on these things. And I think it's something we don't think about that much, that the internet is still kind of new. It wasn't until after 2000 that we started getting MySpace and Facebook, and we started getting kind of what we see today as the modern internet. I can't even imagine what the, internet like 3.0 is going to be. Yeah, but it's kind of amazing how fast we have come. And I will say that, it is interesting how fast schools switched over to being able to work online, how fast doctors switched over. That's a different thing that public policy has been holding back. But it is an interesting time. And I would say that as a society, we are still kind of dumb to data and privacy and kind of defending ourselves or taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, it's the consumer. What I think we would consider the consumer version of the internet still, is after 2000. Of course, there were other examples in the 90s, even in the 80s, CompuServe, then eventually AOL and things like that. But sort of what we think of as the internet now, sort of a little more wide open. And I guess, my ultimate thought here is that when we made that switch to where we relied on computers and being able to connect with people through the computer, through the internet, for school, for healthcare, for work, we had the technology, we had the knowledge, we just didn't have the motivation, I think. And then some companies stepped up. I never heard of Zoom before 2020. Microsoft and Teams, that was probably out there, but I'd never used it really very much. We did some stuff with different meeting software, but yeah, all of a sudden necessity became the mother of invention, if you will, and we figured it out. I am not at all, at this point, indicating whether there's good and bad, because I think there's both, and I think some demographics really had some disservices done to them, but others thrived, so it's an interesting time.
Well, she might hit on you next. We also saw that this digital transition was not experienced equally by all Americans. The experience of the last couple of years has both illustrated the tremendous benefits of these tools as well as the challenges and risks posed by this growing dependence. We've seen how security vulnerabilities can have sweeping effects, disrupting fuel supplies for an entire segment of the country and halting meat processing operations nationwide. We're dealing with, so this is Lina Khan. She is slightly left of Bernie Sanders in my estimation. At least Bernie will be like, the free market is a market. Maybe the government should take control. And Lina Khan's like, burn down the free market. But so that's just where she is politically. I don't care for this speech, but it is interesting when the left talks about like data security like this and setting this up. They talk about it in what's happening outside of the government, but like how many documents were just leaked,
right?
And they were comparing that leak to how bad the previous leak was. So these are the secret documents that were just taken and photographed and put on. I think it was Reddit. I don't think it was 4chan. He wasn't fully old school, but. Like secret national secrets that dealt with very, not just very classified, but tough international issues were put online. That is a data leak. We had the leak that was a few years ago where the federal government lost all of the information. I think that your information was in there, Kelly, but all of the information of everybody that's had a clearance was lost. There's a side story to that where there's actually like one site that wasn't compromised because they don't connect to the internet the same way. I mean, that was all the federal government had to do for data privacy in that case was unplug themselves. So I find it interesting that when the administration currently left, I would assume that it would be the same from a right-leaning administration because nobody wants to admit to the government not being good with data. But they never mention what's been happening for the government data leaks, which I think have been much more troublesome in the bigger scheme of things than these issues. We've also seen how privacy breaches can be materially consequential, with violations exposing millions of children during the course of doing their schoolwork or resulting in the purchase and sale of individuals' sensitive health data. Meanwhile, greater adoption of workplace surveillance technologies and facial recognition tools is expanding data collection in newly invasive and potentially discriminatory ways. Or it's letting us get on and off cruise ships faster so that we can enjoy our vacations better. I'm a glass half full. I've always been an optimistic person, so this type of statement always hurts me. It hurts me more. It doesn't hurt me more coming from Lina Khan. It's more aggravating coming from Lina Khan. But, like, what is positive? There has to be something positive in her life. But all of this stuff is negative, but it just shows, I mean, she's really trying to attack all of this expanding industry. One survey showed that close to 2/3 of Americans believe that it is no longer possible to go through daily life without companies collecting data about them, while over 80% feel that they have meager control over the data collected on them and believe that the risk of data collection by commercial entities outweigh the benefits. I like numbers. Those are cool numbers.
I also wonder how many people just don't care anymore. You know, like you get the digital license agreement. Yeah, I'm not reading that 400-page document. Click OK. And they're just like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. You got my... What are you going to do? Take all my money out of my bank account? You know, like I think that there's a general... I think it's probably a majority of people who are just happy to go along with using the Facebooks and the Instagrams and whatever else they're using, TikTok and other tools that they're not reading that. I use Clear. I use Clear at the airport. Now, if you don't know what Clear is, right, you can do your fingerprints, you can do your eyes, get you through the line quicker. I don't know what else I've signed up for. Like, do they have my BioRetina stuff that they can sell? I mean, maybe. I really don't know.
I mean, to me, that's the trade-off, right? If you don't... so for me, it's if you don't like it, don't use it. I understand that you might feel like you have meager control, but a lot of times, I mean, I feel like I have, you know, a meager knowledge of accounting.
I'm not saying
that doesn't really change my life necessarily. It means that I look out for an accountant or go to try to find information. So I guess I don't take it as meaning anything. Like, these are just meaningless numbers, although they are numbers. So they're supposed to sound important. And because it's Lina Khan, they're supposed to sound
me,
scary.
When you say meager control and someone's concerned about that, it means that they're invested and they're actually interested in controlling. And my point is, I think there's a whole bunch of people that just don't even care. Whatever you say, that's fine.
Against this backdrop, the Federal Trade Commission is charged with ensuring that our I'll learn to talk. Lina Khan can actually talk. That is one thing. She can deliver a speech. I'll at least try to basically live up to that, but here we go. Against this backdrop, the Federal Trade Commission is charged with ensuring that our legal tools and our approach to law enforcement keep pace with market developments and business practices. With its longstanding expertise in how companies collect and deploy Americans' data, along with its unique combination of enforcement, policy, and research tools, the FTC is especially well suited to this task. True. Do you believe that statement is true or false?
May I?
You can punt.
May I
can
have the
answer
question again, sir?
Do you think that the FTC can keep up with the private market?
In what world do you think that's possible?
No. And I mean, I guess that to me, it's you could be negative about everything because you think that the federal government should have control over it. But I think that's like believing you should have control over your 25-year-old kid. Like, the fact is like, we have an adult out there running around. It's the market. And you don't really have control over it. You can just try to give it the best incentives that it possible. And but thinking you have control over it is just
you can
ridiculous.
Try to influence, but they're going to do what they want to do.
In my remarks today, I will offer a few observations about the new political economy and how Americans' data is tracked, identify a few ways that the Federal Trade Commission is refining its approach in light of these new market realities, and share some broader questions that I believe these realities raise for the current frameworks we use for policing and the use and abuse of individuals' data. I'm going to translate before we move on. I'm going to talk about how the government should control private companies and our private internet use. All right. Concerns about Americans' privacy has long preceded the digital age. Louis Brandeis and Samuel Warren in 1890 famously sought to define anew the exact nature and extent of privacy protections guaranteed by law in the face of recent inventions and business methods. They explained that the law protects people from the unwanted prying eyes of private actors, almost in the same way that it protects against physical injury. Brandeis is interesting. Lina Khan is considered the leader of the Neo-Brandeisian movement.
Wow.
So Judge Brandeis is the guy who said that big is bad and was going after kind of any of the big companies. And Lina Khan kind of came to fame when she was in college. She was writing one of her papers, like, attacked Amazon. And I mean, she's young. The last time I saw her age, I think she was 31. She might be 32 or 33 now. So she's still young. She's not too far away from that paper. But it's kind of what brought up this idea that she's going after all of these, in addition to the data that we're talking about in this speech, she's going after all of the big companies and trying to figure out how to break them up or hurt them or bring them down a notch. And so that's why she brings up Brandeis in this. So she's the leader of the Neo-Brandeisian movement.
He was Supreme Court, right?
We just got over the yep. We just got over the football draft, and one of the podcasts that talk about it is Barstool Sports, and so they talk to all of the big draft people, and so one of their big questions is, hey, give me something that I can sound smart to my friends when I'm out drinking a beer and we're watching the draft. So this is the political version of that. You know what the Neo-Brandeisians are all about.
I actually have a tattoo that says Neo-Brandeisians for life.
Well, that's not cool. I thought I was the only one that had that tattoo.
I copied yours.
Okay. It's it's right next to my mustache tattoo. Similarly, lawmakers in 1970 passed the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the first federal law to govern how private businesses could use Americans' personal information. The law prescribed the types of information that credit reporting agencies could use and guaranteed a person's right to see what was in their file, a recognition of the unique harms that can result when firms have unchecked power to create dossiers on people that can be used to grant or deny them opportunities. Now, that's an important one because I think that that statement, I believe, is the crux of my argument against what she pushes for in this. But it's an interesting statement. So she's going to make the jump that because credit card companies have dossiers and can use those against your credit, Facebook having what profiles you paused on can harm you in some way.
Well, I don't like Facebook's algorithm right now because I'm interested in something just to see more about it, and then I'd realize it's dumb. Now I got 50 of those things in my feed. Well, you only got to click on copper flasks one time, and now your whole feed is copper flasks, taking us all the way back to the first season and maybe the first episode.
I was going to say that. I think that's the first episode. I just used my copper flask last weekend. Look, that did not hold me back. That gave me an economic opportunity to give the manufacturers of copper flasks some money for my copper flask benefit. It has a nice patina now,
That's
too,
sweet,
by the way.
I really didn't have a problem with copper flasks. It's just the thing that jumped in my mind.
Though these basic principles governing what types of personal information businesses can and cannot collect and use extend back decades, the context in which we must now apply them today looks dramatically different. All right, so I got hung up in several other portions of the speech, and when I try to take these speeches down, sometimes I go one step below this and try to pull back some of the academic talk. she's nerdier in this speech than I thought before. But this is as you take it apart, it's a sentence that makes sense. I think every word, she's not like fake academic. Like these words all mean something and have a place in the sentence.
Okay.
Or I can't talk, so maybe it's not
No,
academic.
I think you're on.
Read out loud correctly, but I mean, it's an interesting. It was an interesting sentence that seemed pretty dense. I guess is what I'm saying. Digital technologies have enabled firms to collect data on individuals at a hyper-granular level, tracking not just what a person purchased, for example, but also their keystroke usage, how long their mouse hovered on any particular item, and the full set of items they viewed but did not buy. As people rely on digital tools to carry out a greater portion of daily tasks, the scope of information collected also becomes increasingly vast, ranging from one's precise location and full web browsing history to one's health records and complete network of family and friends. The availability of powerful cloud storage services and automated decision-making systems, meanwhile, have allowed companies to combine this data across domains and retain and analyze it in aggregated form at an unprecedented scale. What is that statement? It's trash in, trash out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
I think that, garbage in, garbage out. I think that, in some ways she's right here, but in some ways this is just pure fear-mongering. They have no idea how to take everything that they can possibly track and put it together for anything. Now, I would say that there's probably whole groups of people that are trying to figure that out. But, if you're tracking, if you think that because I fell victim to buying a copper flask that you can tell who I'm going to vote for, that's probably a stretch. But I feel like that's what she's going after here.
Okay, I don't know if this makes any sense or not, and you can cut me off, but one of the things when I did have my security clearance that you brought up earlier was they would tell you, be careful what you talk about. You're sitting at the restaurant, the bar, whatever, because if they're out looking for data from you, information about you or what you're working on, no one's going to come walk up to you and say, hey, what do you do for a living? And ask all the questions they want. It's going to be a series of comments, questions with different people over a period of time. They're going to piece that data together, and then they'll figure out what they want to know about you. I was very, very, very low on the target list, by the way. But there are others that would be much, much higher. All right. And so you have to be aware. So I just didn't talk about stuff. I felt it was better just to let people think I was just a schlub, and especially since I was. So when you look at the data, the raw data, you've got to have somebody figure out the algorithm or the connections. But then there's also a bit of mind reading, maybe, because maybe I just hovered over that picture because it was interesting or something weird was about it, or I got up to let the dog out. I don't know.
Yep.
But I guess patterns certainly are. I'm sure data people would tell you that patterns are absolutely detectable if you have enough data, if you have enough good information in.
And I think it's there. I just think that we're pretty far away from like a, being able to not just track everybody, but to forecast everything based on all the data. Like, I think people are picking out like certain pieces of data and trying to use those for things. And so it's not this everything or all or nothing approach. Some firms like weather forecasting or mapping apps, for example, may primarily use this personal data to customize service for individuals. Others can also market or sell this data to third-party brokers and other businesses in ancillary or secondary markets that most users may not even know exist. Indeed, the general lack of legal limits on what types of information can be monetized has yielded a booming economy built around the buying and selling of data. That is the tattoo I have on me. That's the, yes, that's right. And it's not that, of course, these people are, sometimes you sign off on data, sometimes you don't. So you click on that cookie thing all the time. Data's out there, but this business is booming, and currently it's making my life better. So like the things that I want are getting brought to the front. So instead of having to see, ads for geriatric vitamins that are randomly on my page, I get the copper flask. And that makes my use of these websites better. That makes when I get in my car, I get a map suggestion for the 5 places that I'm likely going to go. That is awesome. I guess I love booming economies. I love booming economies where government hasn't regulated as well.
Do you remember when Disney switched over to their bracelet thing? It opens your hotel room door. You can use it to pay for stuff. I forget what it's called. You Disney folks know what I'm talking about. Magic Band. Thank you, Disney folk. So one of the other things it does, which I thought was brilliant in a closed environment, was they just track you. They just watch and see where does the data show people go first. They walk through the gate and then do what, and then where do they go, and then where they go, so they can optimize the experience. They can determine where they want to do upgrades and future things, and where they're lacking, where people don't go. I thought that was brilliant. It's an internal ecosystem, and you sign that away by saying, "Give me the ticket, show me the mouse." You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I mean that place, it's run to perfection when you go there. I mean, the design of it's amazing too. I think the trash cans are 27 feet apart because if they're 30, people will start putting stuff down. At least originally, the trash kind of disappeared underground, so it all stayed clean. They've been ahead of the curve on these things, and the curve that they've been on is what we demand as consumers. And so for me, again, and the only reason I keep stopping in this area is that we're on the fear mongering, negative Nancy, Nelly, whatever, negative side of life here. There's positives to this stuff. All right. This has let firms provide services for $0 while monetizing personal information, a business model that seems to incentivize endless tracking and vacuuming of users' data. Yes, it has. That's why I like Facebook. I love Twitter. TikTok's taking off. All of this stuff is important, but it's all free. And if something's free, you have to look around and see that you're the product.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm on the shelf. They're selling me. That I believe is in my book, Profit Motive. What drives the things we do? You can pick it up on Amazon today. No free ads, I guess.
We'll let that one go.
Indeed. I went into the voice. That's why I called it an ad. I was like, this is too dumb.
Get the latest book from Charles
break
Sauer.
It off and Grover Norquist called it the Ronald Reagan of economics books. All right. Indeed, the value that data brokers, advertisers, and others extract from this data has led firms to create an elaborate web of tools to surveil users across apps, websites, and devices. While these data practices can enable forms of personalization that could, in some instances, benefit users, they can also enable business practices that harm Americans in a host of ways. That goes back to that AI's good, but it might do these things. I just stop. There's good things to these. For example, firms can target scams and deceptive ads to consumers who are most susceptible to being lured by them.
Firms?
They can direct ads.
What's a firm?
Yeah, there's no firm that is trying to defraud.
You mean criminal
people, right?
organizations or Target? Because I'm not here at Walmart. We're trying to deceive you. I don't understand okay, never mind. Word choices. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's the craziness. Yeah. And so, I mean, again, I like it. She's got the high level academic speech, but as soon as you start pulling back the veil, it is just fear mongering. And then the choice of firm there is a definite word choice, and it's kind of a ridiculous word choice. They can direct ads in key sectors like health, credit, housing, and the workplace based on consumers' race, gender, or age, engaging in unlawful discrimination, collecting and sharing data on people's physical movements, phone use, and online activities. Meanwhile, can put people in serious danger, allowing stalkers to track them in real time.
I just bought for what are they called? AirTags, the Apple. Yeah.
Yeah.
My kid's going to Europe this weekend, and I want to be able to stalk her from the States so I know where she is.
I mean, so hackers can hack into this information and stalk you in real time. I can stalk my brother-in-law because we share each other's locations on Google Maps.
Yep.
But I don't think that's called stalking. You know, he's on a boat living by himself. This is in case he gets lost at sea, here's where Jeff was last reported. That sort of thing isn't stalking. That's important. Right. And this is just, it's more of the fear mongering, or it's just like private companies aren't stalking you. As we talked about, Disney's likely is tracking you so that they know how to use stuff. But that's not tracking either. They're not going to send somebody like, hey, man, you've already been to the Peter Pan ride 3 times. We need you to move on.
Nobody writes Peter Pan 3 times. You can't stand in that line for that long.
Awesome.
What'd you do today?
That's true.
Peter Pan 3 times. That was it. 6 hours in line.
It is weird. It's a great like old school ride, but I don't understand why the line is 2 hours long. They can direct ads in key sectors like health, credit, housing, and the workplace based on consumers' race, age, gender, or age, and engaging in unlawful discrimination. Or they can actually help you out based on your... Right. Actually, I found this out the other day. Insurance companies have to discriminate based on sex because females cost more. And so if you set up
this is my final episode.
No, I was sent kind of the prices for a product that's getting ready to come out, and the prices were dramatically different for the sexes. And I was like, I know why this is this way, but maybe you should think about changing this so you don't get canceled. And he's like, man, I know, but all of the underwriters and all of the different states won't let you have it any other way. Otherwise, it causes perverse incentives. So let's say you were charging a man $10 and a female $100 because that's the actual cost of doing business, right? And so you instead decide to meet in the middle at $50. Well, then men are less likely to sign up because it's more than they cost. And women are more likely to sign up because it's less than what they cost. Therefore, you have perverse incentives where the company ends up being financially unable to sustain themselves. So it's actually a state mandated difference, which is wild to me, but it's also again, these statements are crazy. These companies don't want data to discriminate against people. They want data so that they can get more customers and make more money.
Okay.
Collecting and sharing data on people's physical movements, phone use, and online activities, meanwhile, can put people in serious danger, allowing stalkers to, I guess I've already read that, and failing to keep sensitive personal information secure can also expose users to hackers, identity thieves, and cyber threats. Go talk to your CIA brethren.
That was my favorite Sonny and Cher album, Hackers, Identity Thieves, and Stalkers, or whatever you call it. You're too young to know that.
I must be too young to know that because the only thing that I went with that beat was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I can't remember what it's actually
I was
called.
trying to
Gypsy
go with
Thieves
you.
and Lovers, I think, was the actual name of the album. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that was it. 1973, I'm pretty sure.
I'll have to look it up. The incentive to maximally collect and retain user information can also concentrate valuable data in ways that create systemic risk, increasing the hazards and costs of hacks and cyber attacks. Beyond these specific harms and data practices of today's surveillance economy can create and exacerbate deep asymmetries of information, exacerbating in turn imbalances of power. As numerous scholars have noted, businesses' access to and control over such vast troves of granular data on individuals can give those firms enormous power to predict, influence, and control human behavior. In other words, what's at stake with these business practices is not just one's subjective preference for privacy, but over the long term, one's freedom, dignity, and equal participation in our economy and society. True or false?
False.
False. False, Kelly. The answer's
Here's what
always
I was
false.
stuck on, though. We just need to have everybody use the old childhood soup can on a rope. That's how you got to communicate with people, because everything else is far too dangerous. Forget about the benefit. Forget about moving things forward and evolving into technologically sound and better living. But no, there's always a bad guy. The Russians are coming for sure. Do we get to the Russians in this speech, or?
I don't think we get. Well, no, because the Russians are currently like a. She doesn't even, I think, make it to the Chinese. I think the Russians might be one step behind the Chinese. But it's
funny because the Russians aren't even the biggest threat.
So wild.
Never mind. Let's talk about something else.
No, I think that this is, to me, this sort of what they're going after is basically kind of trying to stop data collection. I think we'll get more into it in a second. But what I like picturing is this bifurcated internet where you have one group of people who can afford it and opt out of having their data collected, and one group that can't, but the internet providers can't collect data on them. And so they just don't really get access to the internet. They don't get access to information.
No innovation.
Because
there's no incentive. Yeah.
Yeah. No incentive. And so there's this group that pays for it and gets free access. And now you want to talk about problems. That's where the problems occur. But right now, they're called the 1% for a reason, right? There's not that many of them. If you're just marketing towards those people, that's not a real market for any business. All you have to do is watch one episode of Shark Tank, and you can figure out that isn't going to set up your business for life. You actually need to market to everybody. And so for me, more data means more ability to market to everybody. And for that matter, you're marketing to them personally. So I don't see any of the problems that she mentioned. I do see kind of an opportunity for us to understand our own data, but these business models themselves, I think, are important.
Wouldn't it be prudent to, instead of feeling like the Chicken Little in the world is falling on you, the sky is falling, to maybe invest in ways to prohibit the bad stalker from down the street from stealing your Facebook data? I mean,
that's the thing.
Marketplace.
They can't even edit. They can't even figure out how to do this themselves, because they can't stop people from stealing the government's data. And yet the talk here is about, protecting data out in the
commercial.
public. To me, if this was all about, the FTC is well positioned for data policy. We need to start with the federal government and secure our data. All right. And she might win me over on that one. Because
clean up your own house
the
first.
federal government does need to clean up what they're doing. And the information that they're losing has cost the U.S. lots of money and puts us at risk in the future. So that would at least be interesting. I don't think that I would take a jump from, all right, we've shown that we've cleaned up the federal government. It's time to go out into the private sector. But at the same time, at least that would make some sense. Our talented FTC teams are focused on adapting the Commission's existing authority to address and rectify unlawful data practices. A few key aspects of this approach are particularly worth noting. First, we're seeking to harness our scarce resources to maximize impact, particularly by focusing on firms whose business practices cause widespread harm. This means tackling conduct by dominant firms as well as intermediate firms that may facilitate unlawful conduct on a massive scale. For example, last year, the commission took action against OpenX, an ad exchange that handles billions of advertising requests involving consumer data, and was alleged to have unlawfully collected information from services directed at children. I like the children as the human shield. I do think that it's interesting to talk about children on the internet. We might have mentioned this in a previous speech, but there's Josh Hawley's trying to take on TikTok right now, and the scare is that TikTok was a Chinese-owned company. It's not technically a Chinese-owned company now, and I believe the servers for TikTok are in Texas. But that said, he wants to take TikTok out of children's hands, and it's hard to say, like, no, children should have TikTok. But there, Congressman Justin Amash, a former congressman, he said, hey, Congressman Hawley, why don't you parent your kids and I'll parent mine? And I think that's really the point here. I do think it's interesting when we talk about kids, but I think it's something that parents should do themselves. I think that the internet provider we choose is going to give us the most chances. The phone provider we use is going to give us the most chances. And the browsers we choose are going to give us the most opportunities to take care of our kids and watch out for our kids on these platforms. But I'll admit, when they use the kids as a human shield here, it's like fairly effective. But when they're talking about tackling conduct by big firms and intermediate firms, I know that there's a lawsuit against a company called I want to say it's Kamacha. No, it's Kochura.
Kombucha?
We were talking about kombucha before the show, so I apologize. I got stuck. But the FTC is currently going after a company called Kochura, and they are not a very large firm, and they do sell. They do have data. They are one of these data collectors, and they're just trying to use it as an example of what's going on in the market, and trying to hold them up and lobby through litigation and show not only other companies that if you collect data, we might come after you, but also try to use it to show Congress the types of businesses that they're interested in going after, and that so Congress maybe should take up information as well. It's bad for investments. It's bad for innovation. It's bad for the economy. But it is interesting when she says that dominant firms as well as intermediates, they're actually truly going after intermediate firms and small firms, and the market outside of the real dominant firms is scared. So I guess you might be able to make the statement that she's defending dominant firms because it's less likely to enter a market when the federal government's going
right.
after
And I don't know much about the economics of all of this, but it also feels like, oh, let's go after a smaller firm, an intermediate firm, I guess is the term you used, and they won't have as much money to throw at it as Facebook or whoever, billions and billions of dollars, where they have lawyers on retainer of all different flavors. And so let's go make a point, and then let's get some news for us, and let's get Congress involved. And yeah. $600 in your bank account.
It's bad.
Got to report that.
I've seen the lobbying through litigation in the private sector. I just find it's truly appalling when it's the federal government doing it, because it holds back the whole economy when they do it that way. It doesn't cost her any money either. When a private company does it, it at least costs them money.
They could have a stake in it.
But
she can just do it for fun.
Yeah. Yep. It's not just a round of golf. Second, we are taking an interdisciplinary approach, assessing data practices through both a consumer protection and competitive lens. Given the intersecting ways in which wide-scale data collection and commercial surveillance practices can facilitate violations of both consumer protection and antitrust laws, We are keen to marshal our expertise in both areas to ensure we are grasping the full implications of particular business conduct and strategies. All right, the academic part of that just annoyed me. Did it annoy you while I was talking?
I'm furious.
No. Put your professor hat on. Ooh,
This
maybe
is my
I can't have
professor
your
hat.
professor hat on. Put that's I guess that's a newsboy
it
hat,
is.
not a professor hat. All right. And not your professor hat. I need somebody that's actually grading hard.
Okay,
here.
Reinstall, our good friend
Reinstall. He's not giving that a good
Reinstall.
grade, is he?
No, he's gonna, as they say in the industry, bleed all over that with red pen.
I mean, the deal is it's not a. She didn't need those words to make that statement.
Yeah.
She could have been much more
Yep.
direct, and it would have been much clearer. And I guess that's where I was mad at myself while I was reading that. I was like, why? Just shut up. This is too long, but now you're invested. Just keep going, I guess. We'll make it through to the other side.
Self-loathing while you were reading this?
That's what, all the negative part of the first part of the speech, it's gotten to
Yeah.
me, I guess. All right. Also key to our interdisciplinary approach is our growing reliance on technologists alongside the skilled lawyers, economists, and investigators, including data scientists and engineers, user design experts, and AI research. And we plan to continue building up this team. The deal is they're never going to beat the private sector, right? Like, they can build whatever they want. They need to have knowledge. But like, unless they want to actually hire up create their own tech firm, they're just not going to be able to beat these guys, which is why, kind of like as a parent, you can have a whole bunch. The parents that have too many rules don't apply all of their rules all of the time. And you see these kids, they're fairly easy to spot. The kid takes off, they yell stop, the kid keeps going, they run after their kid yelling stop, and the kid thinks they're playing a game and keeps going. Usually it doesn't end up bad, but I don't have many rules with my kids. So when they're doing something and I say stop, they stop. Because there's not too many rules for them to break, but not listening to me. That's one of them,
I
when you
don't
have,
want to bring up that original, the old Pet Cemetery movie from the 80s. There's a scene just like that. It's terrible. Never mind. I don't want to talk about it. It's not relevant at all.
What is that, like the scary movies where they're like, stop, don't do it?
There's a kid running away, and then there's a truck.
The person ends up in the
There's
wrong
a truck,
place.
and
Yeah.
Never mind. Next is let's do something else. Too much.
I just look, you can build up whatever sort of team you want. It is smart for the government to have insight into this, but as she's shown and led up to, she's trying to build up this team so she can go after private businesses, and that's just not
Here's my
gonna
thing.
ever
You're
happen.
looking for the people to your UI people, your data people, your economic people, right? So okay, it's a specific type of person that wants to go do that work for the government, I believe. It's not the person that wants to have the most innovative or most creative. They're not going to feel like they're on the cutting edge. They're feeling like they're going to curtail something, to manage something, to fix something. Whereas the private sector, I would think most of the folks there are looking to go innovate, evolve, do something brilliant, meet a goal, stay up all night, throwing darts at a board trying to figure out a problem, as opposed to how do we go and curtail what someone else is doing. I think that's a difference of personality. They may be very talented people, not knocking them, but the mission is different, and therefore the type of person you're going to get is different.
Yep. All right. Third, when we encounter law violations, we focus on designing effective remedies that are directly informed by the business strategies that specific markets favor and reward. This includes pursuing remedies that fully cure the underlying harm and, where necessary, deprive lawbreakers of the fruits of their misconduct.
Fully.
I feel like I have you on my side now. For example, the commission recently took action against a Weight Watchers subsidiary, Curbo, alleging that the company illegally harvested children's sensitive personal information, including their names, eating habits, daily activities, weight, birth date, and persistent identifiers. Our settlement required not only that the business pay a penalty for its law breaking, but that it delete its ill-gotten data and destroy any algorithms derived from it. It's the hard one again. It's the children as a shield. Like, cool. I don't think that this is a data problem, though. This is just like, if there's rules about collecting data on kids, like, this is not, then this isn't new. This isn't about what's going on in the data market. This is about a company breaking a rule about collecting data on kids.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Where appropriate, our remedies will also seek to foreground executive seek to foreground. This is, I took the speech as written, but I don't think that that's the right word. Executive accountability through prophylactic limits on executives' conduct. In our action against SpyPhone, for example, the FTC banned both the company and its CEO from the surveillance business, resolving allegations that they had been secretly harvesting and selling real-time access to data on a range of sensitive activities.
Their name is SpyPhone. What was the logical leap you had to make there?
And what did that resolve? I mean, that doesn't resolve allegations. Like, whatever. The resolving allegations is if their name's SpyPhone, if they were taking something they weren't supposed to, which you're right, with the name SpyPhone.
Look, I got my new bank fraud credit card.
Sir, is this the bank fraud credit card? I'm sorry, we do not accept that here. Get your SpyPhone phone out of here. Lastly, we are focused on ensuring that our remedies evolve to reflect the latest best practices in security and privacy. In our recent action against Cafe Press, for example, our settlement remedied an alleged breach by requiring the use of multi-factor authentication, reflecting the latest thinking in secure credentialing.
They went after Cafe Press because they required multi-factor.
No, because they didn't. So, like, people were not themselves, I guess. And my assumption is that this is like they had a maybe a T-shirt with Biden with a cane, and they were like, "We want to go after Timothy," and they're like, "I'm sorry, we don't know who Timothy is." Like, you need multi-factor authentication so we can really know who Timothy is.
That sounds right.
I mean, who knows on that one? But I mean, that is the ridiculousness of going after companies this way, like. If Timothy doesn't want you to know who he is, then Timothy should be allowed to sell a picture of Biden with a cane. I'm just making up the Biden with a cane idea for those of you. Go ahead and steal it. Give me 10% if you make anything. Let's call it over 1,000 on it, okay? There you go. There's your idea for the day. Biden with a cane.
Great idea, Charlie. You're going to sell 1 million of those.
I probably won't get anything, Kelly, but that's okay.
Well, you're trusting that Jimmy or whoever made the shirt is going to send you your $100.
What is it? Is it the Black Queen that has like 6 bad ideas before other people wake up in the morning? I don't know what that.
No, never heard of that. What is that?
What is that? Is that?
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Not Cinderella. What's the whatever? All right, now I'm lost in my own story. Even without a federal data privacy or security law, the FTC has for decades served as a de facto enforcer in this domain, using Section 5 of the FTC Act and other statutory authorities to crack down on unlawful practices. No doubt we will continue using our current enforcement tools to take swift and bold action. However, the realities of how firms surveil, categorize, and monetize user data in the modern economy invite us to consider how we might need to update our approach further yet. First, the Commission is considering initiating a rulemaking to address commercial surveillance and lax data security practices. if that doesn't deal with the government we're gonna, I don't know. We can't really take this podcast after something because we just do speeches,
Right.
but well, you and I can do something ourselves. Wide rules could help clear notice and render enforcement more impactful and efficient. Second, we need to reassess the frameworks we presently use to assess unlawful conduct. Specifically, I'm concerned that present market realities may render the notice and consent paradigm outdated and insufficient. Many have noted the ways that this framework seems to fall short, given both the overwhelming nature of privacy policies and the fact that they may very well be beside the point. When faced with technologies that are increasingly critical for navigating modern life, users often lack a real set of alternatives and cannot reasonably forego using these tools. I love that. You can't reasonably forego using Google Maps. Right. So we need to change the way that Google Maps collects data. This product's just too good. But I mean, that's the thing, right? If you don't want Google Maps to collect your data, just use
Apple Maps.
Print off the directions from Yahoo as we used to.
TripAdvisor? Wait, does that have maps?
What did we used to, was it MapAdvisor? What did we used to like print directions off of? MapQuest. That was great.
Still fumbling with papers. But it's not a fold-up thing. You're like, I don't know which way the crease goes.
I love teaching my kids. Like, they're like, you really use this? Yeah, we actually use that. Now fold it back up right. Going forward, I believe we should approach data privacy and security protections by considering substantive limits rather than just procedural protections, which tend to create process requirements while sidestepping more fundamental questions about whether certain types of data collection and processing should be permitted in the first place. The central role that digital tools will only continue to play invites us to consider whether we want to live in a society where firms can condition access to critical technologies and opportunities on users surrendering to commercial surveillance. Privacy legislation from Congress could help usher in this type of new paradigm. Thank you again for inviting me to speak today. This is an incredibly exciting and momentous time for these issues, with much at stake and a tremendous amount of work to be done as we chart a path forward that keeps our economies dynamic and our citizens protected. All right, I'm going to go right back up to the second to last talking point. The central role that digital tools will only continue to play invites us to consider whether we want to live in a society where firms can condition access to critical technologies and opportunities on users surrendering to commercial surveillance.
That's a lot to unpack right there.
Users... This is that should everybody drive a Ferrari question. No, not every. And if everybody drove a Ferrari wouldn't be a Ferrari. They'd have to make too many of them. If you want to, like, a business should be able, Google Maps could charge me a ton of money for Google Maps. They don't. And in that case, I like that. I like not paying for it, and I feel that the fact that I don't pay for it actually makes it a better platform because they're out trying to figure out how to make my experience better through, kind of giving me the things that I want because the other companies are paying them to figure out how to make it better for me. But like, if a company wants to do that, this to me is just, it's a bad business pitch. So if she went up in front of the Shark Tank and tried to pitch kind of the opposite, like, I'm going to run a website where we provide all opportunities to users that they want without surrendering to commercial surveillance, and we're going to do it for free, the Shark Tank people are like, no. And then if she's not doing it for free, they're like, how much are you going to charge? And she's like, well, I have to charge them $300 a month. And they're like, have you asked your customers? And they're like, yeah, they've all said no because they're currently getting it for free. And they're like, like, it just doesn't make sense with any sort of rationality besides just the ego that the government can solve everybody's problems. Right. And it's her defining the problems in the first place. So I get frustrated at this type of speech. I'm frustrated at Lina Khan's leadership, at the long con that she's running. But I don't even, President Biden's President Biden. He was one of the most bipartisan senators. He has a long track record of working on both sides. I think as a president and a leader of a party, he has to be pretty partisan as a president. And for that matter, to fight with the current Republican Congress, I think you have to be fairly partisan even before you go to the negotiation table. But Lina Khan doesn't seem to follow that mold of the administration. And so it stands out as more intrusive and more like one of these things is not like the other. It's her leadership and like how far left and anti-market it is that gets to me.
Yeah, and we talked about it before. It's a different kind of personality and different kind of goal if you're trying to curtail something as opposed to innovate something. And, okay, fine. Nobody wants bad stuff to happen. But that's just human nature. But there's a trade-off there for what are you willing to surrender in order to have some benefit. And we go back to what we talked about early on, which is at some point, if you're getting something for free and you find value in it and you use it regularly, you're the product now. And that's just the way it is. It's the way it is.
You just have to understand that, and that's you treat the internet accordingly with that in mind.
Lina the Long Con. It's a great boxing name.
That is a great boxing name. I like it. All right. Well, with that, hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure that you come back. And Kelly, it's good to see you. We are back on track for our every Monday post. And so let's keep this up for a while. And I look forward to talking to you again.
You too, Charlie. Have a great rest of your day.